So I'm stuck streaming on my phone again. I hate this so much. Every time I use this feature, it's awful because if there are interruptions, like let's say, I don't know, a sound interruption, for example, I can't hit the button to mute the mic. So this stream already is getting on my nerves. I'm gonna see if somebody comes in, or if not, we can just close it out. Because I am irritated. Like there's a problem with my Wi-Fi, where the main network I connect to connects on my phone, but then not on my computer. And the other network that I have the access code to likes to screw up during streams. So it all sucks. It's really terrible. I'm gonna wait to see if any of my favorite characters appear. If they don't, we can wrap this up. I don't know, just streams in general always get on my nerves because if it's not a technical issue, it's someone coming in there being ridiculous. I don't have the same patience for them that I have with videos, because with videos you can just turn on the camera and then speak. And you don't have to worry about anybody just randomly writing something crazy in the chat or any of that other stuff. Oh, non-binary says that they have arrived. Yeah, these Wi-Fi networks are the worst. So I'll shoot for 30 minutes because I don't really like this format. And if the chat is actually entertaining or engaging, I'll go a little bit longer. The snap, and also we keep prefacing this. We have spoilers for Infinity War, for Endgame. I can't believe I have to say that, but there are people who will get mad at you online for talking about something that has been known to the world for over 2 years with regard to both movies. Anyways, um, the snap in Infinity War is probably one of the most interesting story concepts I've seen in a long time. So I read the Infinity Gauntlet story, which is the story that Infinity War is partially based off of, and it's like a thing where the snap happens, and then it just kind of your stream title was pretty clickbait. What? How is it clickbait if I'm talking about the thing in the title? There we go with the people writing the insane things. I'd like an answer on that. How is it clickbait if I discuss what's in the title? Every time. I would love an explanation. Please enlighten me. I'm waiting with bated breath. No comment? Hey, bringing new meaning to the term Monday Madness. Matter of fact, where's that feature? Let me see if I can grab it. Yeah, I don't even know what that means. Like I'm just doing a stream about something I thought was interesting that I didn't see discussed by other people. And usually if I write a title for a topic of a stream, I'll talk about that title for either the entire stream or a good chunk of it, unless some other concept or idea is introduced. Anyways, I read the Infinity Gauntlet story, and the snap is reversed at the end of the story. So the idea that you would have 5 years of time where all these different people, random people, are dead, um, I thought was a really good storytelling device because it would allow you to see how people would grow or otherwise act differently without certain other people, being around anymore. And this was something that I thought was done better than the comics, where there's the status quo is God or whatever. Because even though you're eventually going to theoretically go back to certain characters being alive again, um, because of the long stretch of time, 5 years with all these different characters dead, you could actually see how the ones that survived changed. So that was the first thing I thought was interesting. But I said before, I'm very sympathetic towards Endgame because it had the difficult task of telling a conclusive story to, what was it, 22 movies. When I really think about it, they had a lot of things that they didn't do that, um, what's the way of saying it, kind of threw out a lot of what I thought was interesting about that idea. And I was going to give some examples to illustrate my point. I guess we could start with Hulk. I know a lot of people that don't like Professor Hulk. I don't have a problem with him. But it was a consistent thing in both the Avengers films and then also in Thor Ragnarok for him to have this like arc of not being able to control his other half. So the idea that he would finally be able to control it by blending the two of them together, I think could have made for an interesting movie. But it's a culmination of his story that we've seen ever since he was first introduced in 2008 with Ed Norton playing the character. That happens off screen. This big major shift for his character just occurs while we weren't able to see it. It's he can't control Hulk. He won't come out because he's embarrassed by Thanos. And then 5 years later, now they're fused together, and he can use this form at will. And they've reached this understanding. We don't know what he said or what he did, but we know they reached an understanding. I just thought it was an excuse to use the character without having what usually makes him compelling. And also so they could focus on other people's stories. So they quietly resolved something that they built up for years, just in the background by courtesy of a time skip. I'm always gonna hate Universal for screwing up the chances of us getting another Hulk movie. I'm always gonna despise them for that. Because that's the problem that Hulk has. He's always stuck in other people's stuff, and they won't focus on him to the extent that a major character like Hulk would require. So we always get like these half-baked ideas with him. But the Hulk is Bruce Banner, so how would they become one person? Talk about plot holes, right? Well, I'm not. What I'm saying is, if you have a character arc of a character who has a side of themselves they can't control, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and then that character says they have reached an understanding with their other half to where they are transformed as their other half but still retain their personality, wouldn't you rather see how that happened than have it explained by a line and a time skip? It's the same thing with Hawkeye. He loses his entire family at the start of Endgame. And then all of a sudden starts going around killing various criminals as Ronin, which I thought was cool as far as like the spectacle of it. But think about it. His whole family dies on him. And at some point he makes the decision to get vengeance for their deaths by getting rid of people who he believes should be dead instead of them. And we don't get to see how he comes to that conclusion. He just goes from this heroic character to then being this anti-hero with like nothing in between explaining it. It's his family disappears before his eyes, and then he's out killing various criminals via time skip. We're supposed to just deduce that in that 5 year period, he decided to become this different type of person. And again, I thought that would make for an interesting movie about trauma and loss where you lose your entire family. They basically made him Punisher. Like, wouldn't you rather see him come to the conclusion that it's screwed up, that his family is deceased after they were good people, but these criminals and creeps are still alive, and it's his job to get rid of them, that he comes to that conclusion? Wouldn't you rather see that on screen than he quietly, in the background, moves to that with no explanation for it? It's not a plot hole to change a character. It's really strange to me that they just have this big major arc that occurs to make them act differently than they did in 5 years before, that we don't get to see at all. We see the inciting incident and then he's out killing people. James says hello. I'm still mad at you for hearting that guy's comment. That was terrible. I've never been ashamed of your online behavior before, but I am now. I'm going to scold you. Say, how could you favorite this person's comment? No explanation at all, but I guess since he lost his family, we're supposed to assume he turns out bad somehow. Right, but again, if you have a 5-year time skip and it's being used to change characters in drastic ways, I don't see how that's good storytelling or rewarding for you as a viewer. Yeah, like non-binary. Imagine a whole movie where it's Hawkeye by himself. Maybe he's out fighting some random, because it's a superhero movie, so they have to fight some villain. And throughout the movie, he's just thinking about his family. Oh, this reminds me of when I used to teach my daughter how to, shoot bows. And, this is like where I first met my wife. And it's not fair that these people I cared about have all been snapped out of existence by some galactic madman they never did anything to. But these criminals are still around. I should, I think that could make for a great story. And it really sucks because Hawkeye is, out of the original 6 Avengers in the MCU, the least developed. Like, he's the only one that didn't show up in Infinity War. He's the one that gets the least amount of screen time in the first Avengers because he's brainwashed for the majority of the movie. So really, the only film that gave him what I would consider an appropriate amount of focus was Age of Ultron, which a lot of people say is the least good of the of the 4 Avengers movie. So that's I'm just saying that's another, like with the Professor Hulk thing, it has a similar beat of the character transforms, regarding like how they act very significantly in this 5-year period, and we don't get to see any of it. We're just supposed to assume that they had this major development that, again, sounds interesting on paper but goes completely unexplored. Hey, another example is Captain America. In Winter Soldier, he meets Peggy, his love interest from the first Avenger, and she says, we can't go back. And he has this character of being someone who is a soldier, which is why when he's fighting Tony in Civil War, he says, I could do this all day. And then we're supposed to believe that at some point between when Thanos does the snap and then when he goes back into the past to put the time stones where they're originally supposed to be, he decided it was okay to stop being a fighter. And that sounds like a major thing for a character to go from to be this person who enjoys their position of being this fighter and soldier to, okay, now I can retire. This big shift in his motivation, and we have no idea how he came to it. And it was the same thing with, like, also consider this. In Infinity War, so the team of that group that he was with after Civil War, it was him, Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, Vision, Falcon, and Bucky. And that whole team dies during Infinity War with the exception of Black Widow. And we don't see him mention a single one of them at all. Like, imagine you spend years looking for somebody with regard to Bucky, and then that person is getting rehabilitated for 2 years, and then the first time you seemingly are in combat with them again, where you're fighting together after they've been rehabilitated, they die on you. Wouldn't you think that would deserve some kind of mention? Like, oh my God, this person I cared so much about, I thought was dead before, is actually gone this time. It never gets addressed. He lost his entire team except for one person. And you don't see either of them ever mention any of those characters by name throughout the whole movie. And you can look at his conflict with Tony as another example of just stuff that's really, really rushed. Like they have this argument at the start of Endgame that Tony starts, admittedly, uh, and then they have like they're on speaking terms enough to where when Steve shows up to his house with Ant-Man and Black Widow, he's willing to like have dinner with them, so we can infer that they at some point became, on good terms again, but we don't get to see it. We don't know what happened or what specific thing caused them to bury the hatchet, especially one that was as big as that tore the Avengers apart. Yeah, I like Age of Ultron. I don't care what anybody says. It's not my favorite one of them, because I really, really love the first one, but I do like it a lot. I like their interpretation of Ultron. I think they did a good job with, because I've mentioned before, I don't like that they made Hank Pym just not be Ant-Man, like just skipped him over and made him part of some, generation that is not the same as the first wave of Avengers. But I do like that they at least tried to keep the thing of Ultron's created by somebody that he later despises, thinks he's better than. So take that for what you will. The only thing I don't like about that movie is what they do with Quicksilver. Because I really like Quicksilver. He's one of the earliest members of the Avengers to join. He joined during their second year, so it was disappointing to see him glossed over. And it sucks too because most of the adaptations that he's in, especially the ones that relate to X-Men, have him in like as a villain or antagonist. So I would have liked to have seen him acting as a hero for once. Again, at least in an adaptation for the first time. It is what it is. Oh, let's not even start talking about Thor. You know what? At least with him, a lot of people were talking about how it was ridiculous that they made the God of Thunder this, I guess, blubbery person that just plays video games all day. But think about this, right? 3 movies that are spent developing him as the future leader of Asgard. And then he just decides to hand over the reins of leadership to Valkyrie, a character that, as far as we're aware, has never shown any leadership skills herself. A character who, when we're introduced to her, was hiding. That like turned her back on Asgardians, said I don't care. That's their leader. So imagine like if somebody, no, I'm not going to give that example, but just like I've never seen that before where someone says, screw where I came from, I'm never going back, I don't care about them, whatever. And now, oh yeah, she's going to be the one in charge and exhibit these great leadership skills. I just think that's hilarious. And a slap in the face to what was a step. Like, even with Ragnarok, that movie came out a year, no, excuse me, a year and a couple of months before Endgame did, and they just spit in the face of it. Now they want to bring back Tony. Well, I mean, here's my thing, right? I would love an Iron Man 4 that's set between the five in that 5 year time skip between when Endgame starts and then when they go and get the time stones. because there's a lot of stuff with him they easily could focus on, like having him fight the real Mandarin, for example. And he's another one that they like glossed over excessively. So, and this isn't just the fault of Endgame because this stuff started before that, but 3 movies are spent building up his relationship with Pepper, and then in Civil War they break up off screen. Then they get back together ahead of Infinity War off screen. And then during Endgame, at some point in that 5-year time skip, they get married off screen. They have a kid off screen. Pepper apparently starts to want to do the stuff with the armors off screen. And then he teaches her, or she learns how to use the rescue armor off screen. So you could easily make an Iron Man 4 that is set in that 5 years between when Endgame starts and when they get the time stones, where it's Tony fighting the real Mandarin and teaching Pepper how to use the rescue armor, as well as them, like maybe have the movie end with them getting married. If they did that, I would have no problem with never seeing Tony again. I'm just simply saying that all of that stuff, those major developments with what leads to him entering a phase of his life that he was very satisfied with, we don't get to see at all, except for these little tiny pieces in Endgame, and we don't see how it develops in the slightest. Because again, they have a 5-year time skip, and they like nothing in between. So he handed over the reins to a literal traitor. Well, see, she never did anything to Asgard, so I wouldn't call her a traitor. I would call her someone who turned her back on her people, who said she didn't care about them. It's kind of like if I leave from the U.S., then someone says someone is planning to just do this to the U.S. Like, I don't care about the U.S. That would make me a traitor, but that would make me someone who doesn't care about where I came from. So I think calling her that's a little unfair, but she is someone who did not care about Asgard. No, I would love an Iron Man 4. That would be great. Again, if they did what I would like, which is in that 5-year period and like the different ideas I just said here, I would love to see that. Jane Thor is yucky. I mean, I have confidence in the director. I really liked Ragnarok. I think he knows what he's doing. We haven't seen any footage of it, so I'm cautiously optimistic. I believe in was it Waititi? How do you pronounce his last name? I don't think the person who people say made the best Thor movie is gonna just turn around and make the one that everybody hates. We'll see what happens. Again, if you don't like the concept, that's fine, but I'm not gonna, because I never really had a problem with Jane having the hammer in the comics. Like I thought it was an okay run. So if they want to do it on the big screen, I'm not. If they do it in a way that's interesting, I'll be okay with it. Turning your back on your people can be considered traitorous. Okay, well, I'm just saying that I'm clarifying. You can have whatever view you want about it. I'm not here to. I'm not here to debate Valkyrie. She's only in what 1.5 movies, a little piece of Endgame. I just realized she's the only out of all the protagonists that you see in Endgame in that big major fight at the end. She's the only one who technically has like less films that she's in than Captain Marvel, because they're both only in 2 movies, something else, and then Endgame. Everybody else we see more than Brie. Hey Dio, did you like my Iron Man 4 idea? If they wanted to, they could make a whole other trilogy in that 5-year period, because we don't know what happens during that time span. I just wanted a 4th one that actually like creates the things that we see of Tony after the time skip in Endgame. But if they wanted to do 2 more after that, they could have every excuse and reason to. Like that. That's why I hate that we have this 5-year time period and we don't get to see any of it. Who else is screwed up? Oh, I really forgot Wakanda. So the T'Challa's dad dies in Civil War. You remember that? I don't. See, here's my thing about the series. The actress that played Tony's daughter is not going to look like a little kid forever. So when I said do a fourth one that ends with the wedding, you don't have to worry about recasting a different actress to play the little girl you know what I'm saying. It's that choice of casting, or that choice of story rather, is designed around the major actors retaining their appearances because they're already adults. I think movies would need some big villain. If they put a villain in the 4 year period, it would just be a throwaway one. Right, well, I'm saying that, well, I think Mandarin's a very big villain. But Iron Man has a lot of villains I really like. I like Crimson Dynamo. I like Titanium Man, MODOK. So, Fing Fang Foom, which I doubt they would ever put in the movie, but, if I'm just saying, if they wanted to do a fourth one, they have a lot of stuff they could work with. They don't have to actually resurrect Tony. They can just have it be set in the 5 year time period that we didn't get to see anything happen with, but we know certain things happened. Let me go back to Wakanda. So the dad dies in Civil War, and then both of the heirs, T'Challa and Shuri, die during the snap. We don't get to see Shuri die, but it's confirmed that she died as well. So I'm supposed to believe that Wakanda went 5 years without its heirs, and nothing happened. Nobody tried to overthrow the family. Nobody tried to usurp power. No coups, nothing. Just it was all peace. It was just the mother reigning supreme, and no one. That's why I said that there's so much the snap and that big period of all these characters being dead. I thought was really interesting, and it gets completely glossed over. Plus, if it's a series, they could go in more in depth. Look, I'm just saying, Dio. I don't think you can get RDJ to do a series, or Gwyneth Paltrow, because she already said she doesn't want to do any more Marvel movies unless she has a small part. So I could see them getting the two of them to come back with some big paycheck, but if it's like a show, I don't think it'll work. I think it's much harder to get someone for a series than a movie. And if it's a show, they have a smaller budget. So I'm just saying. He did Doolittle, so I guess he would do a bad film over a good series. Exactly. Why do you think in Falcon and Winter Soldier you don't get to see a Chris Evans cameo as old Steve? Because they those top actors are done. They don't want to come back. Unless they're given some excessive paycheck to do one more, I don't see where you're going to get most of them to show up again. So we have one last original Avenger to talk about, and she's getting her own movie posthumously. Man, Black Widow really is the most mysterious, ill-defined character. But with her, I'm irritated too because she betrays Tony to go with Steve, and they're on the run for 2 years. All of their friends that they're on the run with die, and we don't see her talk about any of them. And then she's like the de facto leader of the Avengers, because you saw the scene in Endgame where she's running the phone lines. Uh, what's it called? You know what I'm talking about, where they have the holographic images of the different people they're talking to. And we don't see how she became the leader, how she feels about any of this. Again, she's not as bad as far as being underdeveloped as the other um, six Avengers, which is why I didn't immediately start talking about her, but it still is irritating. Bet you he got paid a lot to do it though, and yeah, Doolittle is a bad. I haven't seen Doolittle, so I'm not gonna contest that. But you get what I'm saying. There's a lot of stuff they could have done with that time skip period. It would have been really cool to see what causes like just the breakdown of the Avengers after the snap. They all go their own separate ways and do things, and then she has to like become the premier Avenger because when she ascends to like answering those phones, it's during the time that Tony goes and gets married as a family. And Hulk apparently becomes Professor Hulk at that time. So you can infer that her and Captain America are the two last remaining ones of the original six that, are still around trying to help people as superheroes. That's why I said it really sucks that this whole time period just goes completely unexplored. It's just like crazy. But especially Wakanda, that drives me insane. Like 5 years and both of your hairs are dead, and no one we're just supposed to believe everything was peaceful and nothing bad happened. I'd rather watch every bad Eddie Murphy film than Doolittle again. It is boring and predictable. Hey, that'd be funny if at the end of Doolittle they have a post credit scene where it's Nick Fury and he confirms that it was Iron Man in disguise. So you have to that movie's part of the MCU now. You will watch Doolittle again to get all these different clues for the upcoming first appearance of Galactus. I saw it a double feature. Well, I'm sorry that it was as bad as you said it was. What else am I gonna say? Uh, I think that's pretty much it. Like, I'm not complaining about them not doing anything with Rhodey because there's not really anything to do. Like, when I make the criticisms that I do of like this film series, it's because there's a lot of important character beats that get glossed over or skipped that they introduce as being something significant. So that's why I was talking about that. So, like, for example, I'm not going to get mad if we don't get a movie where, I don't know, Captain America just fights random people. But if they did a film, if that film's purpose was to establish how he goes from being someone that wants to keep being a soldier to being someone that wants to retire, so it can like help show where his character arc from Infinity War to Endgame transitioned, I would be a lot more interested in it because it would show an important part of why his character did what he did in the later film. It would flesh him out. So, all of these criticisms are not about. Because I do think the MCU, I would say largely I really like. I like the idea of this interconnective series of films that tell a story, but it's only with the later installments where a lot of stuff started feeling very rushed to me. Like when you're watching Thor Ragnarok and Thor's dad is revealed, it's like he was revealed at the end of Dark World to not be himself, but you find out where he is and you get to see this reunion between father and son, and then he just dies right after they meet. Like that stuff like that to me is very rushed. I guess they got to push the plot along however is necessary. Yes, but I'm saying if there are certain things that add to the plot of a movie or a series of movies, right? Your franchise that you don't explain but that are still important, I think it is worthy of criticism or otherwise being asked, hey, can you slow the hell down? I'll give you an example. This isn't even about Endgame. In Spider-Man Homecoming, I don't even like talking about the MCU version of Spider-Man, but in Spider-Man Homecoming, we see that Peter is worried about Aunt May finding out that he is Spider-Man. He tries to make sure she never finds out, and then all the way at the end of the movie, she sees him with his costume on, says what the, and then it cuts off. And you would think the sequel, right, that's set after the snap, would be about her coming to terms with the fact that her nephew is a superhero, is someone that risks his life on average to save other people, does this very heroic thing, but she's worried about him. I think that'd be an interesting story. We don't get to see any of it. We go from, oh my God, what the, to oh, I'm completely content with the fact that me and my nephew were murdered by this intergalactic thug and he's a superhero, and I found out about that right before we died. Do you see what I'm saying of how stuff like that is when you choose to ignore basic things about characters progressing, your story starts to be uninteresting to me because all I know from this point forward that all you're going to do is just do a time skip or like gloss over it completely. Look at the Peter MJ relationship again in Homecoming and Far From Home. In Homecoming, he doesn't like her. She like weirds him out, and then at the start of Far From Home, I kind of like her. Why? It's never explained. We don't get to see how he started to like her. Nothing. It's just he went from not being interested in her to now he's interested. And that's good storytelling. Yeah, that's my point. It is forced. Imagine if real life was like that. Man, I can't stand non-binary. And then tomorrow, oh, I really like non-binary, and they write nice comments. Well, how did you come to like this person? It's like you flip off a switch. See, the reason they made him like her out of nowhere is because we can't have a superhero movie where there's not a love interest. So, because they didn't want to like have like a vulture plot retread, they had to make the other prominent female that was around his age the new love interest. And they couldn't even do it organically. They couldn't just have the two of them get paired together on this field trip and then speak to each other, find out they enjoy talking to the other person. It's just last movie I didn't like this person. Star of this one, now I like them. Oh my god. And look, another problem. The snap, right? I like the concept because I said at the start of the stream, it makes characters have to acknowledge certain losses that they had, right? So someone who was alive for 5 years that lost, let's say, their mother or their brother or whoever, when that person comes back, they're gonna go, "Oh my God, I've become this. The dynamics might have changed." As far as Spider-Man's concerned, nothing changed other than Tony being, deceased. So he got to keep all of the same classmates. They're all the same ages before. They're literally, other than that little scene at the start of the movie in Far From Home where they have the acknowledgments of the different dead Avengers, the snap has no effect on the plot. Like they made a movie after the snap. This concept I found very interesting. Have no effect on the actual damn movie because they made all the characters not affected by it. Everyone at this school that our main character cared about conveniently was also snapped. Vision and Wanda are underdeveloped. And oh, absolutely. Like, they have a couple of scenes together in Civil War where Vision is nice towards her or whatever, tries to cater to her whims, but also doesn't want her to leave the home. And then they exchange apologies all the way at the end of Civil War. And then he agrees to go on the run with her at some point. And then they're on the run for 2 years. Then they have this relationship that develops, and we don't get to see how it develops. We don't get to see what. Okay, listen, I'm not. If you want to complain about him being a robot, go tell the Marvel editors to go back in time and undo the relationship. I'm saying that relationship is important to the plot of Infinity War, and it's very underdeveloped. I was agreeing with you, and then you want to start talking about this is not Transformers. Only Dio would find a way to make an agreement turn into a debate or an argument. Where did James go? He must have vanished. I guess I'll see him later. He really disappeared. He went to go talk to that guy who accused him of being A certain word I'm not going to use just because he made a video. Wait, how did they become interested in each other again? What, Peter and MJ from Far From Home? I've been talking about a lot of couples. Like, say which couple you're talking about, because I've spoken about at least 3 of them. Yeah. So Vision holds her at the end of Age of Ultron, which is the first movie they're both in. And then he's put in charge of keeping her locked up inside the Avengers house. Then they forgive each other at the end of the movie after the big airport fight. And then they're on the run together for 2 years. And at the start of the next movie, which is Infinity War, they're a couple. So we don't know what she saw in him, what he saw in her. I had someone yesterday, because there's a lot of fans that don't like to ever criticize their own stuff and ever just at no point, who said, "Oh, well, they had a couple of scenes, they had a lot of scenes together in Civil War." Like, yeah, but that still doesn't explain how. Oh my God. Well, they interacted together in this previous movie, so now we know how they became a couple. We don't actually see them explain what they find attractive about the other person, or I don't know, kiss for the first time or anything, but we saw them interact, so that's good enough. Which movie? Oh wait, Godzilla. Okay. No, the Peter MJ relationship is one of the most underdeveloped romances I've ever seen. Like that that comes out of no. And again, it's like when something like that happens, I can only assume it's because they have a mandate that they can't have a superhero movie where there's no love interest. It would have actually been more interesting if he was like if he was talking about Liz, the Vulture's daughter from the first movie. He's like, man, I really ruined her life, and I feel terrible. I destroyed this person's status quo and upended their stuff, and my status quo was just disrupted by Thanos, and now I understand what it's like to have your life upended, and oh, I should go see her. That would have been way more interesting to me than let me, after not liking someone for a whole movie, now be attracted to them at the start of this one. But we got to see Vision try to ground Wanda in Civil War. No, I'm not saying they didn't have enough scenes together. I'm saying that we don't know how they went from that to, being a couple. Gwen Stacy isn't even in the MCU, which is sad. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing with, with Spider-Man anymore. I told you my favorite part of Amazing Spider-Man, the second movie series, was that they actually made, like, Gwen was the most popular character from that series, and they killed her off because they're like, well, she dies in the comics, so she has to die in the movies too, which is not true because in the comic of Civil War, Captain America dies at the end of it, and then in the movie he gets to live. So not only do they not want to criticize it, but they will call the characters comfort characters and convince themselves there's nothing wrong with the way they are written. Yeah, I don't even know I've seen people on like Instagram saying, "This is my comfort character. This is my comfort character. This is my comfort character." I'm like, isn't it sad when you're so desperate to just not criticize something that you have to make up a term like that? Like, there are characters I like, but not comfort. What? Yeah, the MJ and Peter relationship was never really explained, but I guess since she's MJ, we should already know that we're gonna like it. No, James, don't do that. Come on, please. First of all, she's not Mary Jane. She's a different. Her initials are the same as that character, but it's supposed to be a different character. The director confirmed it. When you have a romantic relationship, I'll put it like this: if the first movie was Far From Home, and he liked her, I wouldn't question it because there's no continuity of him not liking her. But if you have the whole movie, which is Homecoming, where he says, where he shows no sign of attraction to this person at all. In fact, he's attracted to another person. And then the next one, oh, I'm attracted to her at the start of the movie. I find that to be very lazy. And again, it feels forced. I guess since she's MJ, we should already know they were going to like each other. Okay. We shouldn't expect the film to explain and articulate to us the case for why these characters like each other. No one's ever watched a movie of a superhero they've never seen the other stuff of. MCU MJ is so different. Yeah, because it's not the same character. Gwen Stacy needs to be there to balance out the love interest. It's like Peter has no other options. Also, MCU Peter can't be a photographer because everybody knows his identity. Yeah, I don't... Well, you know what that is. The MCU committed a cardinal sin with, like, just throwing secret identities to the wayside. Like, nobody has a secret identity in the MCU. Everybody knows who's who. And that's really weird because there are a lot of people who think in the comics Iron Man always just was known by the world to be Tony Stark, and that wasn't, the case. Like, if you go read the early issues of Avengers, he lies to his teammates and says, Tony Stark is letting us use this place. What a generous man. Just like how Thor used to have a secret identity, Donald Blake, in the comics. And they cut it out entirely. I just knew they were going to be together. That's why I said it is, okay, a superhero movie is being made. It's predictable that the hero's going to fight the villain. But I still want them to show why there is conflict. I just knew they were going to be together. But if the movie doesn't explain how a character who did not like her in the previous installment now is suddenly attracted to her, how is that good writing? We're supposed to infer that during this time period that again is off screen, he became attracted to her. Just because. Is it me, or did the people who get turned into dust seem to communicate each other for 4 years? Doctor Strange rounded up everybody very quickly in Endgame. That's the only 3-hour movie I've ever seen where it's like where it's rushed. Like, you have a 3-hour movie and you found a way for it to be rushed. No, it's the snap to bring people back. Then it's Thanos blowing up the mansion. Like, it's the snap and then a little scene of the phone ringing, and then it's the final battle. Apparently, wherever they were dusted, they came back to life there. Well, that's why I'm not a fan of the MCU Spider-Man, so if they don't care, I don't care. If they don't give a hoot, I don't either. Now, the best part of that character in that franchise are the villains. I really like Michael Keaton as Vulture and, was it Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio? Other than that, you can throw the rest in the trash. Like, their Flash is nothing like Flash. Their Aunt May has, like, a weird sexual appeal, which is insane. They're, like, just every character they have some kind of... The only one that actually looks like their character is Peter. Other than that, throw him away. With Hobgoblin as his best friend. I like certain characters, but I don't take comfort from them. That's when you know you need to get off the internet. Non-binary is my comfort commentator. When they write something, I listen. And I feel so warm inside. They've been making her younger and younger. I told you, like, reading the just Spider-Man comics and then watching the MCU are like two worlds apart. Like, Aunt May used to be on her deathbed every 20 or 30 issues, and now she looks like she's, I don't know, 30 years younger. It's so weird. And then the bastards were like, well, we had to make her younger because why would a 60 or 70-year-old woman be caring for a teenage boy? Like, well, whatever. But secondly, she doesn't even act like Aunt May. She's not worried about Peter at all after she finds out his identity. They spent a whole movie. Don't tell Aunt May. I don't want her to be worried or get mad. And then she finds out, and just time skip. Oh, now she's fine with him being Spider-Man. The worst writing ever. Again, the only cool part of those movies to me are the villains. I expect an MCU movie how Aunt May got her groove back. LOL, what old people take care of children. Yeah, but like, okay, you don't want her to look old. Even though all you have to do is just dye her hair gray. And you can just still be an attractive older lady. I don't know what, whatever. But let's pretend that we're all completely fine with the way she looks, right? This character acts nothing like Aunt May. She doesn't worry about Peter at all. Even after finding out his identity, it's like it's just another day in the hood. Oh my God, my nephew that we spent an entire movie having him hide his identity from me just revealed his identity. Time skip. Oh, I'm fine with it. Spider-Man has, like, out of all the MCU characters with their own movie, Spider-Man has the worst supporting cast. Like, there's a problem with every character. And it sucks because I don't dislike the actors. I don't necessarily dislike the characters. They introduce like interesting ideas and then they don't do anything with them. They sit on them. Like in Far From Home, Flash's parents don't come to see him after, he's gone on this field trip, so that like hints at the idea that his family doesn't care about him or they like don't value him, whatever. Still unexplored. Oh my God. Thanos acted a superb job depicting Thanos. You can tell he did his homework. Yeah, Thanos is one of the best movie villains I've ever seen. They really did a superhero movie where the villain gets more screen time than the hero. Somebody said Infinity War should be renamed Thanos and Gamora. Because they get the most screen time out of anybody. It's like a Guardians of the Galaxy character got more screen time than any of the Avengers. In an Avengers movie, no less. I'm so worried for Guardians 3. I don't even know what they're going to do with that. Let me see what else is here. Have we discussed everything? I think that's all of it. So those are different examples of how the time skip, just the snap, you know, it hasn't been used to its fullest potential. Like Falcon and Winter Soldier did a little bit with it because they talk about how people who were snapped out of existence were given higher priority than those that were here the whole time. And they also like have, it mentioned that Falcon's sister like moved on with that. So there is, that was an attempt by them to try and do something with the idea. Like I'll give that show credit for that. But outside of that, I just don't see where it's really been used well. It's kind of, let's see, it's kind of sad though. He carried that movie all by. Oh, I wouldn't say that. I loved, Thor in that film along with Doctor Strange and Iron Man. Because we actually see Thor grieving. Like he's mentioning how he's lost everybody and then he makes the new weapon for himself. And I thought Gamora's actress did a good job. So I wouldn't say that he carried it all by himself. I mean, he was the star, but I don't really see where the rest of them were trash or anything. Okay, let me go back to what Dio wrote. I haven't seen a good time skip in cinema. Well, listen, time skips to me are okay if they're not used to hand wave major developments. Like, let's say there's a movie trilogy where a character gets married to somebody, and the next movie it's a year later and they're still married, right? I wouldn't have a problem with that because nothing consequential to their characters we can infer happened during that time. But if they have a time skip where it's a year later and they're divorced, I'll say, what the hell? I want to see what happened. What caused this marriage to crumble? So you get what I'm saying? That I don't, time skips by themselves are not something I have an issue with. Like the 2 year time skip between Iron Man and Iron Man 2, I have no problem with that because it doesn't look like any major important thing happened during that time to where like I need to see it. But the stuff I was mentioning with Iron Man about how in that 5 year time skip, Pepper gets the armor that he makes for her. She learns how to use it. They get married. They have a kid. Those are major developments for those two characters that I would have liked to have seen play out on screen. I feel you. I just feel like in Western movies they use time skip. Well, yeah, look, that's what I'm saying. If they skip over important things, that's worth critiquing. But if it's just time has passed and nothing, like no major thing has happened, I'm fine with it. Lord Ozai was kind of one-dimensional, though he just wanted to take over the world. Well, I mean, you can have one-dimensional villains and interesting protagonists. Like, none of the villains in Dragon Ball, other than maybe Cell before he gets his perfect form and Baby, are that interesting to me as characters, but I think the protagonists are really interesting. Like, in a fictional work, characters, like, not every character has to be fleshed out and three-dimensional and have all these complex motivations. And just have to have someone who's evil. Because they're supposed to be, at their core, an obstacle for the protagonist to overcome. So Ozai really isn't a character, but more so just a goal that has to be reached. Defeating this character will ensure that balance has been achieved and the series can end on a high note, at least conclude its major storyline. That's why you don't see his face until the third season. He doesn't matter. The show's not about him. It's about Aang and Sokka and Katara and Toph and Zuko. And I guess Iroh as well, but they stopped using them much in season 3. And all of them get enough development to where I would call them three-dimensional. So. Hey, didn't you like Korra, by the way? I saw that video before you hit it. Before you put it in the back drawer. This doesn't need to be an explanation for evil because some people are just crazy like that. Exactly. And like I said, a lot of the MCU films that people really like, the villains aren't even that good. Like, for example, the first Guardians, right? Ronan is just evil because evil. But the protagonists are fleshed out. They have unique personalities. We know their motivations. So it makes up for it. It's not, that it goes to my example of how you don't have to have some interesting villain for a story to be entertaining or good. Hell, Ego from Guardians 2 is kind of similar where he just, like, what's his motivation? Other than just being evil to be evil. Right, but you gotta understand, Azula is introduced during season 2, and we actually have multiple episodes spent developing her as a character, whether that's the beach one, or the like, I guess, yeah, the 4-part finale had some parts with her and her mother hallucinating. So I'm saying that she is given enough time to be developed, whereas with Ozai, he's out of the story for the most part because he's just an obstacle. He's not really a character, or at least one that the development of is necessary for why he needs to be defeated. Like I said, you can go through a lot of the MCU movies that are well liked and they have bland villains, but again, it's okay because the protagonist or the story itself is considered interesting. They changed Ego up. Yeah, like he's not even he's he's not even Star Lord's dad. It's I forgot his dad's name, but they merged him with some other character. Which, by the way, when they were making Guardians 2, Marvel actually found out that they didn't have the rights to Ego. He's owned by I think he's a Fantastic Four character, or like it's like a gray area, so they had to get permission from 20th Century. So if imagine if they couldn't use him, like how different that movie would have been. Right, but I'm saying that we don't need development of their leader if we know that under his leadership, his military or his men are doing evil, screwed up things around the world. That there's certain stuff you don't have to develop if you just show it. So I just get irritated because some people actually think you want them to show everything. It's like, no, I just want them to show things that are important story beats. Like Rocket, for example, loses his entire crew and, by extension, his family, as he calls them, during Infinity War. And we don't really get to, we get that little scene in Asgard where he mentions them when he's talking to Thor. And that's kind of it. We don't really get to see how, like, what did he do? How does he grieve? How do you go from always having Groot with you to then having all these different people with you as part of the Guardians for years to then having none of them for 5 years? You know, so I'm not, this none of this is about just I want to see more of this character. I want to see what specific things did he do while affected by this great loss. Yeah, he usually gets in a fight with Galactus. Yeah, I'd really like to see a live action Galactus. I think it would be really cool. Just all the characters teaming up to beat him. Two characters being married after a time skip is important because we should see how those two characters develop. Let me also add this non-binary. You have three movies, Iron Man 2 and 3, that are all built around this relationship between these two characters. And then at the end of the third one, you have them get together, right? Yeah, we got Cloud Galactus and Rise of Silver Surfer. That's stupid. Well, anyways, so you have three movies about the two of them getting together, and then they're broken up off screen, and then they get back together off screen before the next movie after that. And then during this time skip, they not only get married, they have a child, and then the male shows the female how to use his weaponry so she can have her own armor to participate in battles. And you're just thinking to yourself, well, you guys developed this couple, right? Then you broke them off. Then you did all this development that we didn't even get to see. Like, isn't that a slap in the face? Like, just to you as a viewer, like if you follow a relationship in some series or franchise, whatever, and then like important story beats or things that happen, they don't let you see. You're just informed that they happen because you see it after it's occurred. Imagine if a TV show was like that. They have 2 seasons where they're trying to fight the main villain, and then the show gets canceled, or they start a new show where the main character is part of the main cast. Like, oh yeah, I defeated that villain a long time ago. How'd you do it? I want to see it. I spent 2 seasons watching you prepare. Let's actually see the fight. How it happened. This major story conclusion that I don't get to see. I just hear about. You see what I'm saying? No, I hated Cloud Galactus. I thought that was the dumbest thing ever. We want to keep the real Galactus for a Silver Surfer solo movie. And then it never happened. Thanks for making me wait over 10 plus more years to see that big purple and blue devourer of worlds. But hey, Tony Stark is a comfort, so I guess the writing doesn't matter. It just sucks because I really like the character. I think if they wanted to, they could tell at least one more movie story in that 5 year time period. That could like close up all these different things that I wanted to see. Maybe it might take two, but I would be content with one. If they just came back and did an Iron Man 4 that explained all those little questions I put up, then I'd be fine. The thing is too, that might be okay if the shows had like 1,000 budgets, but these are multi-million high budget movies, and these are movies that are built around telling a continuous story. So when that continuous story has something important happen and they don't let me see it, and it's like you've built this up movie after movie, I feel like it's a slap in the face. Because at some point after Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War and that time skip in Endgame, Thor goes from being someone that wants to protect Asgardians, that wants to be the leader, whatever, to realizing that he can't do it, or like walking away from that. And it just, we have that one little conversation with him and his mother, and that's it. Surely there was something in that 5 years that made him switch around so much. Too bad we don't get to see it. I haven't seen Jem in a long time. He vanished. He pulled a Jimmy Hoffa. But yeah, these are multi-million, high-budget movies, and they have all these different important plot elements that go completely unresolved. Which is worse, Cloud Galactus or Deadpool with his mouth shut, cyborg eyes, and katanas coming out of his arms? Oh, that X-Men Origins Deadpool. I really have to think about it, because on the one hand, Cloud Galactus, like if they use regular Galactus but he's in the movie for 2 minutes or less than a minute, I would still be annoyed. But then I probably think if it's 2007 CGI, it's not going to be as good as it would look now. So I probably am going to go with Deadpool with his mouth shut. But at least we've gotten regular Deadpool now, so that was introduced and then resolved a lot quicker than than the Galactus fiasco. But that's how you know the majority of people are not going to care about that. They'll just eat it up anyway. It's really sad because, like I said, a franchise that is built around a continuous story has these important things that happen that get completely glossed over in favor of talking or discussing something else that they think is more important. Because it's really disrespectful to the character aspect of this stuff. Oh, all of my friends just got snapped out of existence. Let me not talk about or mention any of them by name for 3 hours. And possibly, if I did mention them in the intervening years, you're not going to see me talk about them. They could have done a whole Captain America 4 in that time skip period where he's like, all of my friends are dead except for Black Widow. And then, like, he's fighting some different villain they haven't used already. It could be this whole tragic piece about all his loss. how he came to the current times and accepted that he couldn't go to the past, and now he's ended up just like he was when he was on ice, alone and by himself, with everyone he cared about now gone to him once more. You know what? And then there's yeah, they are the Loki show is based off of that little scene from Endgame where they where the alternate Loki is able to click on the to hit the Tesseract, whatever, and then disappear. But another good example is Fury. Like, he recruits all the Avengers, and then we see him at the funeral of Tony. He has nothing to say about the first person we saw him recruit in the entire series being dead, or about Black Widow being dead. A person who he was acquaintances with for at least 10 years. No comments. And then in the next time we see him, he's on vacation in Spain. Hey, all of my friends, all these people that I trusted and cared about are deceased. Let me go on vacation, not say a word. How does that make sense? Oh my God. It's like they don't even care. Like, the writers themselves don't care, so why should the characters? Imagine if you're just sitting in your living room and then all of a sudden your mother just turns to dust before you. And then, like, for 5 years, you don't mention her, you don't say anything about her, just nothing. Oh my God. They made a 3-hour movie rushed. Again, I have a lot of sympathy for Endgame because it had to resolve a lot of different stories, but it sucks they couldn't just breathe. Why do they keep releasing shows of criminally underdeveloped characters? I still want to know how Wanda coped with her brother's death. Yeah, we don't really get to see it other than that one little scene when she's watching TV and Vision comes up and she says that she doesn't want to talk about it. Imagine your brother dies and then you just never mention him. They give us that little clip in WandaVision, which, again, I thought it was nice, but, you know, it still isn't disgusting. Like, I just can't imagine my brother dying and then I don't mention him. Years and years later, no mention, no comment. It's just another day in the hood. I felt so bad for Quicksilver. I think he's a really good character. The son of one of the most iconic supervillains ever. He can, being able to run as fast as he can. One of the earliest members of the Avengers to join after the original group was formed. I really like him. He's one of the earliest, like, reformed villains in comics is the thing. That he was with the Brotherhood of Mutants with his sister, but that was out of loyalty to Magneto, and then he became a hero. They're using grief as an excuse for her simply not bringing it up. Yeah, look, the writers, they screwed the pooch on that. You already know. And to be fair, there are some people I know who, when they are grieving someone, they don't like mentioning or talking about them. So, while I can kind of get at that, the fact that it took years worth of content for them to finally bring that up, I'm that's what makes me, like, if they made Age of Ultron and then her next film appearance she says I don't want to talk about him, or like makes the answer of I don't want to speak about him, I would I'd be a lot more it'd be more believable to me. Yeah, I don't like mentioning people I grieve about either, but I just step in so I know what you're talking about 100%. Well, that's the good thing about the rewind button. No, I really like that story idea of people at random dying, and then those that are left have to deal with life without those people. And it just seems like there's no real consequence to any of it. And in the cases where there could be consequences, it's just thrown out the window. I think they missed an opportunity to drop Magneto's name in WandaVision's show. They could have dropped hints of X-Men Fantastic Four in the show. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't. I think X-Men will make more sense because she's the one that has the, X-Men connections. It's not even about underdeveloped characters. It's about story ideas are things that we know happened that could have been explored more that weren't. That they use stupid time skips to just get around actually discussing or speaking about or addressing underdeveloped characters. That's why the stream has a title that it has, why the Avengers snap was wasted. I don't think he's worthy enough to lift it. Like, I could be wrong, but I've never seen a comic where he could do it. It would have been a better story element if they explored Wanda's grief instead of using grief as a cop-out to avoid writing. Yeah, like, that's what I don't understand. Like, Quicksilver's one of the first major characters that dies, and it doesn't even get addressed after the film he dies in. Like, he doesn't get name dropped or referenced at all. Well, we'll see. Besides, I already heard the MCU's version of X-Men is going to be called Mutants or some other crazy crap. Because according to one of the people that works there, mutants and X-Men are interchangeable to them, which is insane. I already said before, I don't think X-Men works as that good as a film series. They just have way more members than a lot of the other franchises that get made. But they'll do what they want to do. Let me see what else is here. Did I answer everybody? I think I did. I don't know why you're saying, "Oh Lord." It made a great comics. Oh, I love X-Men. I'm just saying that I don't think when you have films that you have enough time usually to explore a good, like, most of the characters. Like, if they start with some little group of 5 people or 6, yeah. But you know what they do. When they have sequels, they bring in more and more and more characters, and then people, that's when they start saying, these are underdeveloped. They didn't use this one enough, blah, 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 blah. So, oh Lord, that they think X-Men and mutants are the same. Yeah, I thought that was insane because there are bad mutant teams like the Brotherhood that they just like, oh well. Or the Hellfire Club, for example. Like, there's a whole bunch of antagonistic mutants. So I don't even know what they're doing anymore. Marvel, what have you done? I think we're pretty much at the conclusion here. I've spoken about most of the things that get on my nerves with regard to this series. I still like Endgame, but again, because they had to bring the other characters back so quickly, like if they brought them back in with no time skip, right? I wouldn't be saying any of this stuff, but you create this big period of time that you do nothing with, that is there to get the characters to different spots of their lives, seemingly with no regard for actually showing or explaining how these things happen. But no, the ones that suffered the most from it are Iron Man, Hulk, Hawkeye, and Thor. Thor not as bad because we did get to see some development for him during Infinity War with like grieving over all the different people that he lost and believing he had nothing to lose if he lost to Thanos again. But the other ones, it's like they didn't even care. Well, I can't do anything about Dio. I'm not gonna. I can't force you like a movie you don't like. It has a lot of parts I really enjoy. So it's hard for me to look at the concluding chapter with this big, with all these little different scenes that I like by themselves and say, oh yeah, this is bad. Like I really like what they do with Nebula in the movie. Because Nebula's always been a minor character in Marvel. So for someone like that to get as much focus as she did, I thought was great. Yeah, but I mean, come on. The time skip for that show is different because they didn't make like that was just used as a vehicle for characters to be separate from each other while learning new things and not having to show all of it at once. So that wasn't designed to just have major stuff happen with no scene or regard for it. It was that those are two different things. They didn't make that time skip because Usopp's contract ran out. And they were trying to give him a conclusive arc or whatever. Yeah, I like that scene. What was I gonna say? Yeah, like if they did an Iron Man 4, they could have a whole 5 or 6 different mentions of Peter. You know, Tony could talk about he brought this kid into being a superhero or like supported him as a superhero. How when he went to space, the one thing he didn't want to happen was lose him, and then he did. They could have a whole film about his grief over that, along with the other stuff I mentioned earlier in my ideas for a fourth installment. So that's why I was saying that it sucks that they have this big time skip because there's so much interesting stuff they can do with that like huge time period that we don't get to see. That's precisely why I like that time skip. We know exactly what they're doing and we brush it over because it's not necessary to be shown. Yeah. I already told you, I think that's a great series, so I'm not. The worst time skip got, has to be Walking Dead. Double time skip. No, you know what? To hell with that. The worst time skip is Young Justice. That show had one season where they do a good job of developing the 6 protagonists, and then they add 2 more at the end of it. I'm like, oh great, this is gonna be amazing. Season 2 is gonna be more development for the first 6, and then more development for the new 2. And then season 2 takes place, what is it, 5 years later, 6 years later, and almost the entire main cast from season 1 is off the team. And then they don't even focus on the new members hardly except one. That I've never seen a show that I liked the first season of so much that I wanted to throw season 2 into the trash. That show has way too many. Somebody said it right. That show is a toy box of characters. They just let me introduce this one. He'll have one scene where he waves at somebody. Let me introduce that one. He'll have like 3 lines in the next 10 episodes. That show after season 1 is a mess. And it sucks because I can rewatch season 1 and I feel like all the main protagonists are well characterized. I feel like I know all of them. But after that, it sucks. So I think that's the worst time skip. Because you know what? At least in the MCU, they don't have time skips that are designed just to introduce a whole bunch of characters. Well, like I said, I still think season 1 is great. But after that, with that enormous time skip, underdeveloped characters, and just too many characters that they're trying to like squeeze in and focus on, you can throw it away. Like I would buy season 1 and rewatch it in a heartbeat. That's how like high my opinion is of that part of the series, but the rest of it, no, I hated that. That show's time skip makes Endgame seem like a masterpiece. Like it did like amazing storytelling by comparison. I've never seen a time skip that's used to get rid of most of the main cast, replace them with characters you don't develop at all except for like two or three people. A very confusing story that seems to have plot twist after plot twist. Bring back a character from the first season after not using them hardly ever at all in the second one just to kill them off. I thought it was awful. I would love for them to do an alternate season 2 that doesn't have that stupid time skip. That show needs to have timelines like Halloween. That show needs to be like have its own DC multiverse where it's like here's a real season 2 and not the one where it's a bunch of an enormous time skip out of nowhere. Oh, it's definitely a waste of budget. Seriously, the time skip in Endgame compared to that show, like if it's enough for me to give it an applause because they don't introduce a crap load of new characters they don't focus on. Um, like it's way better. We don't even need to do that. I think there's another problem with the MCU being rushed, creating another crisis. They already did Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. How can they up that? I've heard they're going to use Kang. I still think the best next option would be Galactus, especially if they're going to introduce the Fantastic Four. So that's that. No, Young Justice is a show I would after the first season. I'd never want to bother with that again. And they are the king at unexplained big character changes. Aqualad in season 1 is in love with Tula, whatever her name is, and then she dies before season 2, and then in season 3 he likes a guy. No hint throughout the whole show of this guy existing, of them liking each other, and now he's he's attracted to this man. I'm not sure they rushed it, just a lack of detailed focus. Listen again, if it was a year time skip or if it was 5 years, right, and everyone still acts the same, I would have no problem with it at all. Because a lot of movies do that where they skip time and just nothing big has changed. But like it's a completely different show. I feel like that season 2 should have been season 6 or 7. Like what is that? So that's my worst time skip. I hate that show after season 1. I really do not like it. And when people were over, like, I really thought back when it got canceled after 2 seasons that maybe I was mean and they were going to have season 3 start right after season 2. Season 3 has another time skip with even more characters that barely get focused on. And they throw all the ones they introduced in season 2, even the one they focused on the most, which is Blue Beetle, to the wayside. Like, I've never seen a show like this before where they just keep introducing more and more characters that they give little bits of focus to. Then they take the ones they had before, throw them in the trash. Like that's why I said the show is a toy box. It's an animated toy box after season 1. I'm so glad I never got into Young Justice. That would actually piss me off. Yeah, I was angry as well. And like I first assumed they're gonna still focus on the first 8 from season 1. They just changed the roster of the team, but it still is that same. And they didn't even do that. They introduced a new character as a main character in season 1. She has maybe like 5, 6 lines in season 2. Like, what is that? You put her on the team in the penultimate episode of the first season just to completely not develop her during the second one. Let's see. I don't get how they do that after Justice League Unlimited. They ultimately, no. Justice League Unlimited is not the same because even though they had more team members, the core focus was still on the original 7 from the first show. It's not the same. They didn't say, oh, the only 3 Justice League members that are still part of the league are Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and everybody else just appears sporadically. No, those are 2 completely different things. One has focus, Like, you can have a show with a lot of characters, but still have focus, still have main characters, ones that you use more than everybody else. And that's what Justice League Unlimited had, where it had a big league, but still had the same six, or seven rather, excuse me, that it focused on, along with maybe like a spotlight episode for, you know, like 4 or 5 or 6 other members here and there. Two completely different things. How dare you make a comparison like that? But look, I'm going to get off of here. I've enjoyed the stream. I hate time skips when they do stuff like this. I'm sympathetic to Endgame because, like I said, that movie had a very difficult task of wrapping up the story of 20 plus films. But at the same time, it has a lot of ideas that, while I find them interesting, are underdeveloped. And even though Marvel still theoretically could develop them later, because a lot of those actors don't want to come back, we're never going to see the conclusion. So, or how, you know, they got to where they are. So it sucks. But as is the case with media, there's always something about you don't like. So thanks for showing up. Have a good rest of your day. I'll stream again on Saturday. See you later.